Hi, Club Scouts. Before we get started, I wanted to shout out to a couple more patrons who subscribed to our Patreon page this past week. A huge thanks to Sarah Garibaldi and Kimberly Stubblefield Jackson. I gotta say, the ladies out there are really coming out strong to support the show. As three straight white dudes, that makes us very proud. We make a concerted effort to represent the female point of view on the podcast the best we can, especially with guests like we have today, and we hope that shows. Fellas, you're on blast. If you want to support the podcast, please check out our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/BigfootCollectorsClub. That's all the business for now. Let's have some fun. It's time for the show. Hit the music.
It's Bigfoot Collectors Club with Bryce and Michael. I know a ghost story or two. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bigfoot Collectors Club, the podcast where we share personal stories of paranormal history with special guests. Wait, what is this show again?
BCC,
and,
bro.
Tell stories of high strangeness throughout paranormal history. I'm your host, Michael McMillan. With me always is your other host,
Bryce Johnson.
And your producer,
O'Reilly Bray.
And today is our first day in a rehabilitated studio. The clubhouse is getting a facelift.
Looks dope.
We're a little disorganized. This is our second attempt to come in on this. We've been off for 2 weeks. But we're back, and I'm happy to see both you guys.
Happy to see you,
Yeah,
too.
good to see you too, man.
And we have a great guest today.
Yes,
as
we're excited.
teased. I should have gone over what she wants me to credit her with before, but I've known her for a very long time. She's an actress. She's very funny. We were on What I Like About You together.
Sweet.
Way back in the day. She has since, she was on That 70s Show. She was most recently a hot mom on the Nickelodeon family sitcom.
Say it.
Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn.
Said it. Good.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Allison Munn.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
I'm
Woo.
sorry I sort of Me Too'd you by calling you a hot mom.
Oh, it's okay. I'll take that Me Too anytime.
Okay,
Totally.
Yeah, thanks.
I didn't mean to.
If anytime you want to throw hot in as an adjective,
I didn't want to.
I'm good.
I didn't mean to objectify
That's
you.
totally
I just
fine.
boasted about how we're feminists here.
Such a jerk.
In that intro, and then I was like, "What a hot mom!"
No, you could put hot in front of anything, and I'd be.
I just
fine with
always
that.
feel like all the moms on these shows are like way more attractive than their husbands. No offense to that guy. I'm sure he's.
He's great.
I'm really starting this one.
Dig the hole.
And I'll shut up for
Let's
the
start
rest of the
over.
episode.
That's awesome.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm
Yes.
really excited. Like I said, I've become a fan of BCC.
Yeah,
That's
we're talking
so
about
cool.
That's so nice of you. I
Yeah.
think you're like the third guest we've had who
Yeah.
actually listens to the
I
show.
actually listen to the show.
So
I love it.
what about what about our show? Not our show, but what entices you about this subject? I mean, let's get right into it if that's the
Oh.
case. Like, what is it? The ghost stuff? Is it the UFO stuff? Is it the Bigfoot stuff? What is it?
Well, I'll tell you how I found it. I found this just because I ran into you.
Just doing a little grassroots campaign.
Sure.
Yeah, and we bumped into each other at one of our favorite little cafes we like to go to. And
Shout out Village Bakery in Atwater Village.
Atwater Village. And I ran into you and I was like, what have you been up to? And you told me about the podcast. And I was like, cool, that's amazing. I can't wait to support it. What is it about? And he was like, it's about Bigfoot. Okay. I haven't seen you in a couple of years.
Allison, wait a minute.
Something has happened.
Wait, before you get in your car. Do you remember me? Hey, I want to talk to you about something. First of all, you play a really hot mom on that show, that kids show I've been
I've been watching.
And second of all,
DVRing every episode of.
there's a large hairy biped running around the woods. I got to tell you about
I
it.
need to tell you about the Sasquatch. You can listen to all about it. Here, give me your phone. I'll just download it immediately for you, and you can
Yeah.
subscribe. Where are you going, Allison?
And so I was like, well, okay, that's so great. Thinking, what the hell? So I was like, you don't believe in Bigfoot, right? And he's like, yeah, I do.
Big time.
Yeah.
So I took a deep breath. I gave him a big hug. And I said, it was so good to see you,
Business has
Michael.
been rough on everybody.
And I got in my car and I was like, holy shit, Michael has gone off the deep end. He believes in Bigfoot. I got to listen to this now.
I feel like as entertainers, it's like okay to come out of the Bigfoot closet, so to speak. Whereas like if you're like a dentist or something, maybe it's not so cool. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you're in the dentist chair and like, did you just read about that new Bigfoot sighting?
You know that there's at least 5 dentists in this country whose entire office is dedicated to
So
Bigfoot.
that's a mistake.
Right, totally.
I feel like it's a big mistake.
I feel like if you're a dentist, you have the time and resources to really get into Bigfoot.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If there are any Sasquatch
Please,
dentists,
please email the show.
please, we want to talk to you.
Well-
But we eventually won you over, obviously.
No, for sure. So I got into the car and I listened to the first episode.
Yeah.
And from the second you started talking about your story with the alien and the
yeah.
dogs, I decided aliens are real.
Oh, that's right. You texted me later
Yeah.
that night, and you're like,
I
I'm
had
scared.
chills all
Yeah.
over my body. And I
that's
not for a
good.
second did I not believe you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
We're
There you
going to
go.
package this as a little
Do it.
advertisement.
Yeah, we like that. We like guests that believe everything we say.
So I did. No, well, I don't know about the Bigfoot
Yeah,
thing, but
that's true.
I did it sort of changed my mind, and then I guess I'm gullible or easily influenced. But then I started to
That's
listen
our
to
favorite
each.
kind of listener.
Then I
You
started to
can get
listen to
up on
each
that mic a
episode, and I
little bit
was
more.
I'll get up on that mic.
There you go.
I was hooked.
Oh,
And
well,
now
thanks.
I'm a fan.
All
Yeah.
right,
That's so
great.
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
so
yeah,
nice.
because Allison and I haven't seen each other for a very long time, as she said.
Well, we
spent-
see
Oh,
each
we
other
run
like
into
we
each
run
other.
into
We're-
each other.
and we're on the
I had 2
Facebook
kids and sort of
stuff.
fell out, but now I'm back.
Oh, you fell out of what? A moving vehicle?
The world.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I had 2 kids. I was on a show. I
Yeah.
just kind of like retreated, but now I'm unemployed and my kids are older, so I'm back
boy.
out in the world.
Yeah, well,
happens.
that's
I'm the same.
You're looking at 2.
I'm your male
very-
counterpart.
Yeah, hi.
Unemployed with kids. Hey.
Here we
Yay,
go.
isn't
I mean,
it
I don't have
fun?
kids, but I have dogs, and they need to eat too.
Right?
Yeah, that's basically why we started a podcast, was because we were lonely and sad,
Yeah.
and our self-esteem was taking a real hit. I mean, I'm lucky that I have this recurring gig on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, of course, but you know that doesn't fill all the hours of my
sure.
days, and I
Right.
think that that's really the hard thing about being an actor. Is a lot of people be like, "Oh, I saw you on TV." That's great. And it's like, yeah, that was like 8 hours out of one day of 1 month. There was a lot more time when
Yeah.
I was not getting paid and
Right.
not occupied
Right.
in any sense of the word. So
It's maddening.
It is maddening. So Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn is done.
Yeah, we recently wrapped, and I think we still have most of our season to air. So we haven't. The
okay.
show's not over yet.
Oh, okay, good.
But yeah, I am done with that show.
Okay,
Um,
I'm done with
Yeah, I
it.
loved it. I had such a great time on it. I'm sad. I wish we could have continued, but 4 seasons was good.
That seems like such a cushy
It was
job to play
to be a
parent.
hot a what?
A parent.
What kind of parent, though?
A hot parent.
An
There you go.
attractive,
Yeah.
educated, strong-willed parent.
Right. That's exactly how I talk to my daughter. I'm like, oh my gosh, you look so smart today.
You're so smart. I know. Every time I see a little girl, because they say you're not supposed to like talk about how cute they are, you know, because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, so I'll be like, you're a smart girl, aren't you? I mean, and that just sounds way more like
I
I'm
read,
a pedophile than anything else.
I read recently you're not supposed to ask, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But you're more supposed to gear it towards what problems would you like to solve when you grow up?
That is so much harder for a
Yeah,
kid
but
to at least.
I know, but I've asked that to my kids, and the answers come back are amazing. And
Oh, really?
Yeah, you'd be
gotta try
surprised.
that.
So
That dentist, when he was a little boy, he said a dentist, and then when you asked him what problems, he was like, I want to find Sasquatch.
Kind of like what you wanted to do when you were a little boy, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a little boy, I wanted to be a Disney animator. That's what I first wanted to be because I liked to draw. And then I wanted to be a comic book writer or artist. And then I got sucked into acting because it was way more social. I mean, I love this, what we're doing right now. And I still write, obviously, but it is a very lonely trade. And art, I just was never disciplined. I would sit down to draw, and I know Riley's artistic. Bryce, you're artistic. I would always want the drawing to be finished. I could see it in my head, and I would get frustrated with how much time it took.
Yeah.
And I never learned that that discipline. For some reason, I didn't mind it with rehearsals and doing a play or whatever. I mean, all of it takes time. Creating anything takes time, but
all great
except for podcasts, which you can just throw together in a number of minutes.
That's supposed to be the thing. All great edifices and masterpieces of work are supposed to be never finished. Like, they say the Great Pyramid of Giza, when it was actually at its shining moment, they probably wouldn't have put a capstone on it. To represent that, God's masterwork is never finished,
Oh, that's cool.
And so maybe just stop thinking of your art as being, needs to have a finishing element to it.
Okay. Well, this thing is certainly
there you go.
Rough, so a work in progress.
We're doing God's work.
Yeah,
we're doing God's work. That's it. This is God's work, basically.
No capstone
what I was trying to say.
God is frowning on this podcast. We are dealing with all of the devil's creatures on this show.
Yeah, right.
So, Allison.
Yes.
I know. Well, we spoke a little bit before this recording. I know you've been a little into cults lately.
Oh my! I
What's
can't.
Going on
it's
with
all
that?
I want to. It's all I want to talk about.
Okay.
Think about. I've always loved it. I think we all have.
Yeah.
But it's really in the ether right now. I mean,
What's your personal occult history? Have you ever been part of a cult?
No, I've had lost friends. The first time I even really thought about this is when I moved to LA. I had lost friends to Scientology.
Wow.
Right.
So that got me interested. This was pre Tom Cruise jumping on the sofa, and that got me really excited about what the heck this thing was. And
oh, you actually, I just thought about this. Speaking of the occult, I remember you gave me a hardback copy of the Da Vinci Code.
No, it wasn't. It was that other book that was like the copy of the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, you gave me the Da Vinci Code, I think, and the
What was
the
that one
four
called?
rules. The 4 rules, I think it was.
Same guy? This was like a different. Okay, possibly.
I did read that 4
That
rules
actually
book.
does surprise me.
So there was a time when you were like into.
I wasn't
occult.
into it. I was into reading about it. I wasn't.
Well, yeah,
but I wasn't.
That's into it.
But I wasn't in a cult.
No. But I'm
Like
saying
you
you were
almost
into
were.
like no. I was not almost. I know. I listened back.
I'm getting
to that.
confused with the words like occult and a cult.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
a cult.
Right.
Okay, the
Not- yeah,
occult,
not the occult.
things
Yes.
that are strange, and then cult. The word cult comes from the occult because most cults are derivative of the occult. But I remember you were when we were shooting What I Like About You. You were in that real Dan Brown bandwagon where you wanted to read mysteries about hermetic, symbology and all that stuff.
Okay, I do remember saying the writing is poo, but I liked what was behind it. I thought it was interesting, and that kind of stuff was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I had lost a lot of friends to Scientology. I became obsessed with Scientology and read as much as I could, but there's been so much more, obviously, since
Totally.
then. And I just loved it. Like, I love to read any sort of even if it's not like a well-known cult. I'm just so shocked by people who seem like they're smart,
Yeah.
well-rounded people.
The book was called
Yeah.
The Rule of 4.
Michael just looked it up.
Yeah. I too am
By
into
Ian
all
Caldwell.
that cult stuff. Scientology, that new Wild Wild Country on Netflix.
So that's what I. God, I mean,
And the
I never
Takedown.
continued watching. I gotta
You
get
do-
back
you
on.
have
my
to.
God.
I got
You-
interrupted with shit.
by
I
the,
gotta go
did
back
you
and
finish
watch
the
it.
whole series?
I did. It was incredible.
Okay, because by the end, even that last episode, the man who had become the mayor, that was the lawyer.
Yeah.
They are so smart.
Yeah.
They sound like they have. How did somebody so self-realized and self-actualized fall under the spell of this person?
Yeah.
Brainwashing.
He
Really good, slowly tempered brainwashing, I guess.
But also, I think he's given them something they want. Like, people crave like community and a sense of purpose and things
Sure.
like that. And I mean, some of that stuff spoilers on Wild Wild Country, but that city they built was amazing.
It was
Yeah.
amazing.
No,
You're
it
And
right.
they
really
looked
was.
happy. And it
Yeah.
seemed like, I think people do want that. And so if they're getting that satisfied by the cult, then they can slip over the edge really easily.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, those gurus, they have to be, or those cult leaders, they have to be shelling out gems, diamonds to these people so that they can intellectually take them in and go, oh, my God, that totally makes sense. And, when they're talking about we can change this world and we can have it all be beautiful and all be love. And, people can get sucked into that stuff,
But they were so far down the rabbit hole that by a certain point, Osho wasn't even speaking. He had a vow of silence, and he
Yeah.
would just walk in with his creepy smile in his eyes.
Yeah.
And that's all they needed. They didn't even need words.
Yeah.
Was Osha getting laid?
Oh, all the time.
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they didn't say it, but he said he didn't. But I'm sure he was having sex with Sheila.
Oh, you know.
Right.
it was.
Oh, yeah.
Because she went to visit him every night to like download
Tough
the day.
titties.
Tough titties. I just love her.
That's my favorite thing to say now.
By the
Tough
way,
titties.
she's the whole series is worth watching just for her.
Yeah,
She's
it's amazing.
phenomenal. But then I was so sad because when it ended, the next day I heard your podcast about Keith Raniere, and then 2 days later, it was back in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a real fun time to be alive for me. I've never been more alive inside.
Oh my gosh.
I'm so happy.
So you belong to an anti-cult, which is a cult of one
Yeah,
that
right,
feels
cult
more
of one.
alive when cults are
Yeah,
being
exactly.
exposed.
I mean, I'm not kidding. Like when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I go to Twitter, the Twitter search function, and I'll put in Keith Raniere and see what news come up overnight.
Okay, I want to go back to something we said a couple
It's
minutes
been
ago.
fascinating to follow that story.
Oh my
Yeah, and
gosh.
when I listen back to, we're referring to episode 21 with Kimmy Gatewood, about 20 minutes in, we talk a little bit about this. I did not
Yes, you were.
almost join a cult.
Yes, you did.
I thought you were going to say,
Sorry.
I wasn't completely honest.
Yeah,
I am Keith
Dr.
Raniere.
Keith Raniere. No, I didn't almost join. I was like, I found myself surrounded by those people, and I was targeted, along with many other adults and college students. Hoodwinked, or but I thought I was judging an a cappella festival. But
The whole thing is so funny to me.
guess what? I mean, fuck it. She got arrested, so the actress I was referring to
Was
in that episode was Allison
Allison
Mack. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I just read she got 30 years.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they sentenced her.
No, already? She hasn't had a trial yet.
Oh, she hasn't had trial. Okay.
No.
She's out on a
she's out
$5
on
million
bail.
Maybe
bail.
that's what I read.
She's living
yeah.
at her parents' house in California right now.
She
Yes.
could be. Oh my God, it's crazy. I mean, I don't
Did
know
you date
how much.
her?
No, God, no. I mean, no.
Did you want to date her?
No. I was. I think I was dating somebody at the time. Actually, she was in a relationship with somebody.
Oh,
She
okay.
was
With Keith Raniere.
Yeah, apparently.
Jeez.
No, we were in. We shared managers, and I was shooting the show Saved for TNT. And I would hang out. Actually, hung out with her boyfriend more because he was a painter, and I would go over and paint stuff. And he was just like a way chill dude. I don't know what happened to him. I don't think he was really a part of it. So
How much of 50 Shades of Grey is to blame? I mean, what? Because that book,
slave,
I mean,
the
yeah.
master.
have you read 50 Shades of Grey? Because I don't think
No, but I mean,
But you know it's based on a master and slave relationship.
yeah,
and-
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, it's got all these women in a hot fervor, and
I'll tell you,
know,
what, Keith Raniere does not look like Christian Grey. He looks like Tobias from Arrested Development with longer hair.
I think he wears the shorts.
Yeah, he's a never
He's a
nude.
never nude. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
No, but yeah, so it's just it's crazy because I do feel like some dude on Twitter was like, I was like, hey, you guys should listen to this this episode if you're into this Nexium shit. And there's one guy who's like clearly really out to bust cults was like, an hour and 20 minutes, nobody has time for that. Get over yourself. And I was like, well, you didn't listen because obviously it wasn't our whole episode wasn't about this, but I don't know why I'm
It was
letting-
ESP when you were there, right? Or was it
yeah,
Nexium?
ESP.
Okay.
That was what they were selling. I don't think. I mean, maybe Nexium existed, but
Yeah.
it hadn't graduated to that level yet.
Were you branded?
No, I wish.
only with a BCC logo.
Yeah, only with the BCC logo that Riley put on my butt.
It's part of the thing. It's part of the
After
deal.
there
I
were
cleaned
men?
his bathroom with a toothbrush.
I guess I didn't understand like how it was set up. There were men in the ESP organization and just not in Nexium or not.
Listen, I don't know. All I can tell you was what was going on in this
You're
acapella
the authority
festival.
now for me.
From what I could ascertain, there was Dr. Raniere at the top of it. Then there was another woman who was kind of like his Sheila, who was bankrolling a lot of it. And that's who the house was that I was in, and she was the heir to the
Well, they would
Seagram's
recruit
gin.
too,
Was it
right?
the
Sort
Claire
of a
or
pyramid
the
scheme.
other Claire? Yeah.
And she was very nice, but she was also very, like, they had me MC these live performances each night of all the kids. And every time before I would go out on stage, she would be like, "You have to be very happy and very energetic," and I was like, "I got this."
I'm an actor. I can do this.
But there did seem to even be in the public presentation something that they were trying to communicate and advertise, and I don't think I was doing what they want. I mean, I was very quickly like, I don't know what the fuck is going on here, and frankly, I only kind of stuck around to figure out. I was kind of like, what the hell is this? So I kind of, otherwise I would have walked away. I really would have walked away.
Right.
I felt like I made an obligation. And I did coach these college students who thought they were there for that, which they sadly were not. They were there to get recruited. So I was like, well, I'm just going to stay here and kind of assess the situation. Also, my manager had put me in that position.
So messed up.
So I wanted to arm myself with as much knowledge as I could.
You basically were going undercover.
Yeah, at that point I was like, because other judges were coming up to me, and there were some professional actors and performers and singers and educators going, "What's going on?" And I felt like I was kind of the only one who had a little bit of a tip off as to what was taking place. So
And you're like, we're about to meet God.
Yeah, guys, it's about to get awesome for 10 years, and then we're going to South America, and then it's all falling
It's going to be
apart.
sweet. Just hold my hand.
Save up $5 million for that bail.
We got this. We got this,
Yeah,
guys.
and then so basically what it looks like was there was a lot of women running the show. I got picked up by the airport by a young woman. There was a lot of young women, like fresh out of college or maybe in their mid to late 20s, early 30s. Not a ton of guys. And the guys who were in it, to me, felt very beta male, felt very like kind of nerdy, kind of quiet, but sweet guys. And then walking around, you'd catch a glimpse of him every now and then, arm in arm with a woman, was Keith Raniere. And
what did he wear?
He was wearing he wasn't wearing like a flowing white robe, but he was wearing he was wearing like a blousy white shirt.
Okay, good.
And
like a puffy.
And he had like who's the guy who God, I really feel like my apartment's gonna get burned down now.
I know, I'm scared for you.
Who's the guy? Mark David Chapman. He had like those Mark David Chapman glasses. And, he kind of had like a wispy comb over with long hair and a beard. He totally was presenting himself to look like a guru. He was obviously a stuck-up asshole. He didn't say hi to anybody. It was clearly like, oh, you would have to deem to go to him.
He didn't thank you for being there.
Oh, God, no, not at all. He didn't even acknowledge and I'd been on stage being like, Dr. Keith Raniere, like an idiot, welcomes you to the whatever the fuck this thing is.
I haven't found any video of that yet, but I have been looking.
Oh, that's the other thing is there is video because
Patreon.
they were trying to get everybody on camera,
of course,
to sit down and talk about this thing, and I avoided them all weekend long. And then like one Sunday afternoon, they kind of cornered me, and they're like, "We need some comments from you," and I was like, "Fuck." And you're kind of in that thing where you're like, well, they've paid for my flight and they're putting me up. And so I think I got on camera and rambled about Joseph Campbell, which probably made me sound even more insane because they were like trying to talk about self-empowerment. I was trying to keep it academic.
Pivoting, yeah.
And I just remember being like, saying to my lawyers afterwards, I was like, if that shit ever, they're like, we'll write a letter, don't worry. But I know I sound very
that was Michael Cohen.
Yeah, that man was Michael Cohen.
We'll write a letter, don't you worry.
He's a great man, great man.
But when you said that they were not feeding you, there wasn't ample food. Was that?
So they were catering. They had like, so we were in this. There was this appropriately enough. There is a big, and I don't know. I want to get out. I don't want to take too much time away from you.
That's all I want to
Allison.
talk about. I know. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Maybe we can put this up even as a Patreon thing, or I don't know, whatever. But there's this building in Albany that looks like a UFO. It looks like a flying saucer. It's like this convention center. So that's where everybody was meeting for this thing. And there's like theaters in there and rehearsal rooms and stuff. And then they would cater lunch and dinner, I think, but they would just be like white rice burritos with no protein in them and like iceberg lettuce. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And there's this whole thing. There's a whole method where cults slowly get people, they give them a low calorie, low nutritious diet because it weakens the fucking mind.
Well, yeah, and
the
I didn't know
will.
if it was because. So I wanted to ask you: do you think it was because they were just like not prepared for these
No,
people,
they
or was
were-
that a tactic?
Oh, it was all tactic. The whole thing was tactic.
Those burgers are for people who sign up.
Yeah, all those things were all tactic.
You don't
get
And
those.
at the same time, they were trying to launch a social network that was a total pyramid scheme where you could like you and your friends. It was like targeted to college kids where you would like go buy like if you needed books or a shelf for your room, you'd go to this website, but it was also owned by this. So they were trying to launch this like whole network. It was all a tactic. It was all
Wow.
a bullshit.
That's crazy.
Bullshit public farce. I mean, it was they weren't this, Keith Raniere wasn't into a cappella music before this shit. You know what I mean?
You don't know that, Mike.
It was listed in one of these articles I read. It mentioned he went through a brief a cappella phase. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well,
Yeah.
because also kids started Googling his name and they left the conference.
Sure.
Excuse me, guys.
Michael has a little cold.
They left the conference and then started like tweeting out or whatever, like this guy is a pyramid schemer.
Sure.
And people started leaving. So they were kind of busted by Saturday night of that whole scam.
Right. The internet has really hurt. Easy
Really hurt
access.
cults.
Yeah, has really hurt cults, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
And former serial killers. They caught the
Right.
Golden State
Right.
Killer.
Yeah, that's
Right.
awesome.
23andMe. I was in the middle of reading that book when I was in Austin this
Oh,
weekend.
really?
That was
That's cool. What a cool time for that to
fucking
happen.
fascinating. So while you're waking up and Googling
Yeah.
cults, I've been waking up and Googling updates on the Golden State
I
Killer.
got to get into that.
Oh my God. Anyway, so what about you though? Other than being into all this shit, like, did you ever have an experience?
No, in fact, when I knew I was coming on here, I was like, come on, there has to be something. And I was thinking back, like I would get like spooked out in my basement, but I never really believed in any of this stuff. And the first time I ever thought that like something like a ghost would be taken seriously by anyone was not until I was in like middle school. It was in the news. There was this man called the Gray Man that would roam the
tell us
coast.
about that.
He would roam the coast of South Carolina, like right around Pawleys Island.
You grew up in Columbia?
I grew up in Columbia and went to school in Charleston.
Okay.
But he would roam the coast. He was dressed, they said looked like a pirate possibly, gray long coat. Some people said that he didn't have legs. The story goes that he was started being seen first in the early 1820s. And the story is that he was traveling from Charleston to and then somewhere around the Pawleys Island area, he and his horse got caught in the pluff mud of the marshes.
What's
Pluff mud is like a quicksand.
That sounds like
no.
something out of Star Wars.
I know.
I'm thinking of like Neverending
Yeah.
Story when
Right.
Atreyu loses his horse. No, that was so sad.
Traumatic.
They go down in the quicksand and he dies. And so I don't know what the connection is with storms, but he became someone who would wander the coast and like warn people of storms coming. And I
Storm, bro.
didn't know any.
There's a storm.
storm.
Great man here. Storm
Sir,
brewing. There's a storm
Sir,
brewing.
you have no legs. You're
There's a
just
storm coming.
dripping sands. Maybe that's
You
more
guys
of an
sound
emergency.
just like him. It's eerie, actually. I'm spooked.
Ding dong. Storm
And the reason,
coming.
and the reason why he hadn't been seen in many years, but the reason why he was like he was literally on the news is because of Hurricane Hugo. Like 2 weeks prior to Hurricane Hugo, which destroyed the
Big
coast of
storm
South Carolina. Big storm.
Big storm.
Old Hugo's on his way. Anybody see my horse?
That's wild.
Yeah. A couple saw him. A couple on Pawleys Island saw him. They waved to him and he just disappeared. Like he just disintegrated right in front of them.
He took a giant sand dump
He did.
and then vanished.
And then 2 weeks later, Hurricane Hugo hits. The only house that was spared, and the other houses were completely full, like down to their studs. The only house that was spared was right there. It was their house. The people that saw the ghost.
Oh, wow.
Swear. It was on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Like it got national attention. So that was the first time I thought, okay, maybe there's
something to this.
maybe people take it seriously. I still don't. It's still a joke. And then really, I've had no other experiences. I really have had no other experiences with ghosts or anything until I was. Wait, go ahead. Well, this isn't that exciting because I didn't see it, but this show that I was just on, we shot for 4 years on Paramount Stage 19, which is historically haunted. If you go on and Google it on the internet, you'll see. all these different ghosts, but the famous ghost that's there is the ghost of Heather O'Rourke, the girl from Poltergeist.
Oh, whoa.
She died when she was 12 of complications.
Yeah.
They thought she was misdiagnosed. She died of a heart attack due to like sepsis or some sort of like intestinal infection. But the reason why she's on stage 19, they say, is because a few years prior she had had a recurring role on Happy Days, and she loved
That'll
it
do
there.
it.
She had so much fun. That'll do it. She had so much fun. It was like what she remembered as her happiest time. And she loved to climb up all the way up to the roof and run on the catwalk where all the lighting was hung.
That's not allowed.
No. Somebody called the SAG deputy.
Yeah, our kids on our show could not have gotten
They
up
shot
there.
her down with a taser, and that's why she haunts the
But
place.
like
Get down off
so
the
many
catwalks.
different through the years, so many different security guards would hear like giggling and laughter and running up in the catwalks. One person actually saw her before. There's like all these different accounts, and they say that she's there. So I was always looking for her, but I always imagined that I would look up and just see her long blonde hair hanging down.
Kid ghosts are
staring
the
at me.
worst,
They
especially
really
like
are.
the ones that laugh.
Oh God, please.
And then you're just like, where if it's like storm coming, you can deal with that.
yeah, right.
You know,
exactly.
There's I think there's like, didn't the girl who played the oldest daughter on Poltergeist also die? There's like a whole
there's
Poltergeist
a whole
curse.
Poltergeist. Yeah,
there's
that's
a
what they
line of
talked about.
curse going through the cast of Poltergeist 1 and 2, I believe.
We need eyes on Craig T. Nelson because I will not be able to deal with that.
Oh, and also an editor on Wings, which also shot on that stage, has her apparently in footage. Like she's standing in the background
Oh wow,
of like some scene in Wings.
wow.
And then I never had any experience with this ghost, but apparently people on our crew had. In fact, Devron was a stand-in. I don't know if you remember
Oh, yeah,
on What
of
I Like
course.
About
Yeah,
You.
yeah,
He
yeah.
was a stand-in on this show as well, and he had his plate of food tipped over by her or by a ghost.
Also,
He had heard his name called when no one else was on the stage, like whispered Deborah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, fun fact: she played Dawn in Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn.
Yeah.
God.
It
This
was
whole
great.
time you didn't know the fourth child
It
was a
was
ghost.
an actual ghost for real.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to Google the Poltergeist curse here.
Yeah, that Spielberg seems to have his finger on the pulse when it comes to like being pretty accurate about how these things are depicted. And I know that Poltergeist was like very, I mean, it kind of set the tone for, future like ghost movies, I think, as far as being like the most realistic.
Oh,
And,
for real, yeah.
Same with his film, Close Encounters of the
Dominic
Third Kind.
Dune. That was Dominic Dune. That was Dominic Dune. Isn't Dominic Dune the reporter that was on the OJ case in the courtroom? His daughter Dominique. What was his name? She played the older sister. She her boyfriend choked her into a coma.
Wait, when? How old was she? Do you know?
She was 22 at the time. So she was one, then
That'll do
Heather
it.
O'Rourke, and then a couple characters that I think played spirits on the show. Dominic Dune, yeah.
Was it you that said on the saddest ones, the young ones, like with unfinished business, and
Yeah,
they're
I
coming,
can't
and it's just so
handle-
it's so sad.
Yeah, Dominic
But-
Dune's father was Dominic Dune. He was a famous, I think he was a crime journalist for the, or a reporter for the, investigative journalist for the LA Times, maybe. What did he write for? Yeah, as investigative journalist. Maybe not. He's, I know they lived in LA, but anyway.
But yeah, so those are my only two, I'm in the
By proxy.
ghost sort of realm. But and I never really, I'm so practical, I'm so logical, I like straight and narrow with this stuff. If there's no proof in front of me, like real proof, then I don't believe it.
I'm just fascinated by this because you got your start in New York. You were an actress in the Fantastics for a number of years,
Right,
a
I did
long-running
that for-
off-Broadway show.
Yeah.
And theaters are notoriously haunted. I'm surprised you never had any experience with the theater ghost.
I know, and I was in that theater by myself for years. I mean, because we did 8 shows a week, and I would oftentimes be there alone. I would always be skeeved out, but that's just me being skeeved out. Like I never saw a ghost, or maybe I'm not open to it. I don't know, but my brain tells me I never saw one because they aren't real. So that's because my brain needs to. I need proof.
me ask
to
you
believe
this.
not
things
the
are
only
real.
one.
Have you ever
for sure.
seen an infrared ray or an X-ray? Are infrareds rays, or are they just a spectrum?
It's a spectrum,
Well,
I believe. But
You can't.
I know where you're going with this.
Hey, point to the Wi-Fi in the room.
I can't.
Exactly.
Okay, I hear you. And listen, I also said, on the other hand, I'm also Like I'm gullible.
You know what
I-
else you've never seen? My butthole.
I
And it
haven't. I don't know that it
We
exists.
can't be convinced that.
I don't know that it exists.
True.
Prove it.
Oh my God! What if it turned out I don't have a butthole?
You'd be in trouble,
Prove
buddy.
it.
I mean, you've never seen it either, really.
Yeah.
No, but
Wait
I'd
a
always
minute.
been so close.
Oh, jeez.
What's the name of the theory where like it's that idea of like there's a term for this, and now I'm sure people know it at home, and I'm sorry. And I had this concept of a kid is like if you turned your back, the world would reality would cease to
Oh,
exist.
right.
Object permanence.
There it is, object permanence. Thank
Right.
you.
Nice.
And so it only exists if you're looking at it.
Right.
So you sort of have an object
Not
permanence.
still. And I don't think that that's the right way of thinking. I'm saying that's where my brain feels most comfortable. That's
You're
all.
pragmatic. You're practical.
Yes,
I
I'm
like
pragmatic
that.
and practical. But when I first read, the first time that my brain even opened up to the idea of like something else really was when I read Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. Is that how you say his name? Anyway, it's just about past lives. He was and I loved it so much because he was a skeptic. He was agnostic. He's an academic. He graduated from Columbia and Yale and had a booming practice and had been published many times. Never believed in past life, anything like that. And he was helping this client, I think named Catherine, deal with some severe phobias. And he was using hypnosis to help her work through them. And in this hypnotic state, she starts talking about things that she could not have known about, like things that happened in like BC, like things
Yeah.
that were happening in lives, and her attention to detail was so specific.
She knew the Flintstones.
She totally did. She was like, Barney Rubble is
She
a
sold
dick.
them that monster that was their garbage disposal.
No,
No,
some,
but like there was like story, and I might be conflating two different stories from two different people, but there's like this woman who knew exactly how to intricately wrap a mummy and like and he was able to actually corroborate a lot of it through, it took him a long time to actually buy that this was actually past life. The book was pretty, I highly recommend it.
I've never read it, but I'm
That
interested
sounds
in
way
that
up
stuff.
your alley.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
a great book. And the thing that really spoke to me, because my dad had just died and my son had just been born within 2 months of each other. So I had this sort of whiplash roller coaster experience in life with life and death. And it was this part of the book, it makes me want to cry to even think about it, which is at least like
Go ahead,
soulmates.
cry. Get up on that mic and sob away.
Just scoot closer to the mic and then cry.
It was the part about soulmates and basically and soul groupings, that the people that are your soulmates in your life, the reason why there's a soulmate is because there's a connection because they're from past lives, and that you follow each other in groups. So you might have like your three best friends, or your daughter and maybe my son was my teacher in a past life, or maybe this asshole boyfriend had killed me in a past life. You sort of kind of travel with the same souls through
That's
your
very
lives.
interesting.
And that, because I had just lost my dad and my son had just been born, and I was realizing the love you have for this new little child, and one day not being around that child. And it gave me so much solace and peace and hope that I wanted to believe in it. Like, I didn't know if it was real, but all of a sudden my brain was like, okay, maybe. I wanted it so badly. I wanted to believe it, that was the first time that I thought, okay, maybe there's something more than what I know.
Yeah. Well, those are my favorite types of things when academics get pulled into this paranormal field, and they're really hesitant to like, look at the data. But once they start collecting these stories, and they're led to no other conclusion than something is out of the realm of normal material existence here, and they don't put a stamp on it. This is what it is, but they're oftentimes they're left with an odd feeling of maybe there is something to this past life reincarnation, or this soul groupings or whatever. It's very strange
And I would
stuff.
hope so. I really want that to be true. I have no idea. But what you guys do on the show, which I really love, he did in this book too. He says when it first happened, he went through all of the things that it could be. Like, okay, here's an explanation. Here's an explanation. Here's a possible explanation, and sort of refuted those. That's like
Right.
what you guys do after you tell your story. You're like, okay, here are the things that it could be. I love that because it at least acknowledges doubt.
Yeah, well, you have
skepticism.
to. Yeah, I think is whenever I research a story of high strangeness or whatever, the first thing I'll go to is right to the skeptic websites and stuff like that, and read what they're saying about it, because a lot of the time it'll clue me in onto something like that either makes more sense to like what this could be, or it'll rule something out automatically. But a lot of the times, when you listen to those skeptical sides of things, it almost makes some of the cases that I've looked at even stronger,
Oh,
because
wow.
they're really not
Right.
presenting anything that refutes the evidence. I
Sure.
mean, they're really just kind of being very wispy in their kind of account of what they think is happening. I don't know. Do you have any experience with that, Mike? Or
Oh, well, I do. I mean, I tend to, whenever I dive into a story of high strangeness, I try to just look for the lore first, whatever the folklore is. What's the actual nugget of the story, and then look for answers from there. I'm actually not. Sometimes, you'll get in a little something. You're like, okay, this is obviously fake. There's going to be some of that in today's story. But yeah, I mean, I tend to look for the things that disprove it as well. But for me, the focus is the joy in this is the lore of it. That's what I really like.
But if you find the fake thing, that doesn't destroy the whole story for you?
No, because look, I think it comes back to we've said this on the show multiple times. Just because there's one bad apple doesn't ruin the bunch in this stuff. I mean, I think it can for a lot of skeptics, but if one thing turns out to be fake, it doesn't mean that all encounters are fake. I think that, and this story today that we'll get into is a very good case of this, where I think there was one perhaps genuine encounter and then a lot of copycat and known hoaxes. But it does, just because I think that people build on hype around stuff. Like, I guarantee, many of the crop circles, if not most of the crop circles, are fake. But it doesn't mean there haven't been genuine crop circles.
I was just going to jump up on that. As soon as the media was presented with these two guys out of England, Bauman and
Doug and Dave,
or whatever. It's like the media had their answer. And it just disputed all the history and all the evidence, and they lapped it up as if like, okay, now we finally have something. Everything else is just absolutely, now we don't have to look at that anymore.
Right.
And now we can just easily accept this rote answer that these two old guys with hats and a string and a plank board have been making all these intricate circles, And now they're even dead and long gone, and these crop circles are still coming up every single year in the spring, especially around England and stuff. Some are so complex and so just exceptionally mysterious that there's no way that college kids are doing this stuff, and not only that, just all this stuff. Anyway, but yeah, it just goes on what you say.
I think 9 times out of 10, whatever happened can be explained with a rational explanation. But because of my personal experiences, the door is left open for me for that 1 out of 10 time where there's something going on, we haven't been able to formulate this quite yet, and I think other people have done a better job of this. But as we continue with this project, I'm beginning to really believe that there is some type of higher intelligence outside of our dimensional realm that we live in that is communicating with us, perhaps multiple species or races, for lack of a better term, or types,
cryptids, or multiple scenarios
that are engaging with us on our level in a myriad of different ways, and wearing different masks and different appearances, but might all be the same thing, or might be different versions of something coming from a higher plane of reality, like a higher dimension, a 5th dimension, the 6th dimension, something outside of space-time.
That's when my brain starts to say, okay, night.
Yeah, I get it. It's a big...
because it's too hard. I don't understand.
But think of it this way. It's no bigger than the concept of the old Judeo-Christian concept of God and angels, and that when we die, we go to another place called heaven. Now, we know that some people don't believe in that. I don't know if I believe in that, but we know heaven's not in outer space.
Right, yeah, I have a hard time with all that too.
We know it's not in the universe,
right.
So I think there's something outside of our space-time where intelligence and entities that we can't quantify do exist. I mean, this is maybe just the working of my imagination, but this is stuff that I've put together
I would tend to agree with that.
through just reading all of this stuff. I mean, one of the biggest authors that has led me to this kind of theory is Grant Morrison, who's a comic book writer and a science fiction writer, and some of his experiences that he's had personally, and writers like Alan Moore throughout. So this is me piecing stuff together through 15, 16, 17 years of reading different stuff and reading accounts like this. I don't know what it is. Something's going on. I think something is going on. I think there's something that's beyond us. I tend to think, but I also don't rule out that even in that reality or higher reality, in this universe, I think there are also aliens that live on other planets outside of our solar system. And perhaps some of them, physical crafts, have managed to create wormholes to travel here and may have done that and may have an evolutionary jump on us. So we might be dealing with flesh and blood aliens, and we might also be dealing with extra-dimensional entities that are presenting themselves as something we would call an alien or an angel or a ghost or a Bigfoot or a Loch Ness monster.
You think they could also present as human?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why not?
Right.
I think sometimes there's this great story. For example, there's this great story that was in a and I'm going to paraphrase this because this is just out of my memory. There was a great story that was in I think the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette from like the late 1800s, and it was written in the newspaper where two men were like walking down Fifth Street. And this is like in the age of Carnegie, when he was like building all these steel factories, and the melon banks were all these rich guys, the Rockefellers, were on the rise. And these two men, the story goes, these two men were walking down the street, and a dog appeared out of nowhere, spoke English at them, and then disappeared. Wow. And they reported it in the paper as this bizarre thing that happened. And it's little things like that where I go, much like the way we as human beings sit down and engage a pen and paper and write a story or draw a picture, which is us really engaging with the second dimension. We're taking a second dimensional plane and we are creating something out of it. I think that there are entities outside of our dimensional plane who have the ability to jump down into this reality and engage with it in many different ways that we can't see, because we're on that, we are, for lack of a better term, on that sheet of paper. We can't see the people, the artists outside of this, whether you call it God or aliens or angels or whatever, engaging with us. And when I hear stories like that, I go, somebody got on the line and came down, interacted as a dog, went, well, like a little kid in fashion, and then popped out, and we go, what the fuck was that?
Right.
I think sometimes some of these UFOs that manifest are things like that. I think sometimes when people see angels, it's that. I'm rambling because I'm on antibiotics
I think that's
and
a
cold
very,
medication.
Very fascinating, but point of view.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, great.
To let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do high strangeness.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Welcome back to Bigfoot Collectors Club. We're here with Allison Munn, and now it's time for high strangeness.
As if your last segment wasn't strange enough.
That was called Low Ramblings.
I loved it.
Now, guys, we're going to jump right into this.
Great.
Reptilians.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
Reptilians have appeared prominently in mythology, cryptozoology, ufology, and even conspiracy theories throughout the ages. Typically described as powerfully built 7 to 10 foot tall humanoids with crocodilian features, these scaly creatures often give off the effortless air of total dominance over human beings. The evolutionary opposite of the Homo sapiens, the reptilian holds a dark mirror to humanity, presenting a funhouse reflection stripped of love, empathy, and warmth, and composed only of cold, cunning, predatory desire.
Did you write that? That's
Yes.
beautiful.
This is my writings.
That's gorgeous. I love
I
it.
sat down and wrote this for you yesterday.
Yes. Yeah, goosebumps. I'm in.
Reptilians enjoyed a newfound popularity in counterculture during the early to mid-2000s when British author David Icke, presenting years of crackpot theories across numerous volumes of work with titles like The Biggest Secret and Children of the Matrix, capitalized on the anxiety-ridden post-9/11 era with the unfortunate truth that the human race has long been manipulated by a race of shape-shifting lizard creatures from outer space, secretly and meticulously crafting world events to bend humanity to their will.
Facts.
This tale
Truth.
takes us back to a more innocent time when reptilian humanoids were just small-town wonders and children were left to roam free to discover life's mysteries. This story begins in Bishopville, South Carolina.
That's where my mom is from. Is my mom a
boy.
reptile?
Possibly.
You
According to
guys,
David Icke,
this
yeah,
makes
maybe.
a lot of sense.
I chose this story for you today specifically,
so excited.
Allison.
But my mom was Miss Bishopville. Like she was a
Really?
beauty queen, and she
Oh
was
my
Miss
God.
Bishopville.
So
yeah.
when did she live
Another
there?
hot mom.
Another. Well, yeah. She. I don't know.
You don't know when she was there?
I mean, from
60s, 70s?
in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But I don't know the exact years
This
that she was there.
predates the story that we're about to tell.
Okay.
This
Wow.
takes place in 1987. This is the story of the lizard man of Scape or Swamp.
Of what swamp?
Scape or.
Skateboard.
2 words. Scape or
Skateboard.
Swamp.
Okay.
In some of my research, I found that it was derogatorily referred to as Scape Whore Swamp
No.
sometimes, but I didn't like that very
No.
much. I don't like that name. Now, if you were to visit South Carolina today, and perhaps, Allison, you can back me up on this, and step into many of the countless gift shops lining the streets of its tourist destinations in cities like Myrtle Beach or Charleston, you may be lucky enough to spot the visage of an anthropomorphic reptile speed walking across a t-shirt, or perhaps chilling on a beer koozie dressed in a blazer and turtleneck with a laid-back attitude that seems to suggest, let's party.
This is ringing like a tiny bell.
Well,
Like this is sounding a little familiar.
okay, sometimes he appears in the crude form of a hulking bodybuilder type that looks like it was traced from an old photograph of Lou Ferrigno. Other times he shows up as a poorly Xeroxed copy of the creature from the Black Lagoon. Alas, the lizard man doesn't enjoy the summer blockbuster popularity of his hairy cousin Bigfoot. His charm rides on a more shoestring budget. But the locals of South Carolina, and Lee County in particular, know him well. He is their mascot, their lizard king, and the echoes of his legend can still be heard blowing through the slats of beachside boardwalks to this very day.
Why are you laughing, Michael? This is serious.
serious.
Thank you.
True. So,
Get a hold of yourself.
that legend began 30 years ago in the fall of 1987. Bishopville resident George Holloman Jr. was out past midnight riding his bicycle on a country road near Scape or Swamp. Now, George Holloman Jr., I could not find, in some accounts, he's a little boy. In some accounts, he's a grown-up. I actually started digging around the white pages in Bishopville and found a George Holloman Jr. spelled slightly different than the reports I found, and it put him in his 60s. So I would say he would have been in his 30s.
Exactly. Let's call him right now.
I know, I almost did. Now, so I think he was probably in his 30s because of what happens next. Now, Bishopville is a small town by any standard. Is that right,
Tiny.
Allison? Very tiny. It's boasting just over 3,000 residents in the 2016 census. So we're talking
Small.
podunk town.
Right. Really,
Your
really
mom
small.
was a country girl.
But she was the hottest country
Hell
girl in the
yeah.
town. She was
Hell
a
yeah.
beauty
So
queen.
she
was
was
Miss
a
Bishopville.
hot mom, right? Is that what we're saying?
Totally hot mom.
Now, the story goes that George, apparently in no rush to get home, pulled over to take a sip from a nearby stream and then light himself a cigarette.
I'm going to stop you there. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, please do.
I love that.
Yeah, let's
That was
keep in
before
mind.
bottled water.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is 1987, not 1927. I don't think or 1887. I don't think anyone should be drinking from a stream in a swamp
Well,
in Bishopville.
Old
This guy's
George
just
is
been
just-
drinking unpurified well water his whole life.
yeah, it may have something to do with
That's
it.
why he's a 7-year-old boy that it looks 30 and smokes cigarettes.
And sees lizards.
Yeah, and remember, this is midnight.
Wow.
After midnight. So, as he was enjoying his midnight buzz, he looked across the road and noticed a large malformed tree stump that he assumed was left charred and destroyed by a lightning strike. As a car came down the road, George looked on in astonishment as the tree stump stood up, revealing itself to be a 7 to 8 foot tall reptilian creature whose eyes glowed red as the vehicle passed. George watched, slack-jawed, cigarette dangling from his lower lip, as the beast disappeared into the swamps. George would keep his story quiet until the following August, when more eyewitness accounts and reports of vehicular vandalism spread across Bishopville. In the words of a sheriff who took down a statement from George that following summer, the man, George, thought he saw a haint.
A haint?
A haint.
Like a haunt? Like
Yeah,
a
like
ghost?
a haunt,
Yeah.
but it's
The
spelled
haints.
haint.
Yeah.
He thought he saw a haint. So George thought maybe this is a ghost or a demon of some kind.
That's
My
a fun
cigarette's
word.
dangling.
I like that word.
Hank.
Yeah, he thought he saw a haint.
That's a Hank right there.
That's
if
a
I ever saw.
haint. That's a haint if I ever saw one. He's big old scaly.
Guys
Scaly
doing your
Hank.
Scaly
scientist
Hank.
voice again.
Yeah, right.
But the encounter that truly crystallized the lizard man in Bishopville folklore went thusly. It was summer of 1988. Big was hitting it big at the box office. The top TV shows of the era, The Cosby Show, Roseanne, The Golden Girls, and Who's the Boss, were just kicking off their summer rerun cycle. Billy Ocean's Get Out of My Dreams and Into My Car was still enjoying massive popularity
Love
over
that
the
song.
radio
In the backseat, baby.
Get into my car.
when 17-year-old Christopher Davis was about to get out of his car and step into a nightmare.
Did you write this?
Oh,
it's
I
so
said,
good.
hey,
I love it.
You.
This is how I spent my Sunday afternoon. Christopher was driving down a road near Scape Swamp when a rear tire on his 1976 Toyota Celica blew out. The young man skillfully pulled the careening vehicle to the side of the road and set about changing the busted tire. Just as he was putting the axle back into his trunk, Christopher looked up to see... the jack back into his trunk. Christopher looked up to see a hulking creature charging at him out of the dark.
Oh.
Scrambling back to the driver's seat, Chris managed to narrowly dive back into the car when a 7-foot reptilian monster with glowing red eyes slammed himself against the driver's side window. Christopher hammered the locks down on the door as the attacking lizard man tugged at the handle. The cowering teenage boy watched in disbelief as the creature leaped into the air, landing on top of the car, clawing at the roof, and slamming its claws against the windshield. As the feeble Celica rattled and bounced under the strain of the rampaging cryptid, the terrified teen revved the engine and peeled out. Zigzagging across the narrow country road, the creature finally rolled off the hood, and both parties vanished into the night.
Hell yeah.
Christopher Davis was lucky that night to make it home alive. Shivering with fear in the family living room, the frightened boy, under the concerned gaze of his parents, managed to squeak out in airless breaths what had just happened to him. Once his son had calmed down, Christopher's father walked out to see the car's driver's side mirror had been grotesquely twisted in place, and 3-pronged claw marks ran across its roof.
Boom. Physical evidence.
Like George Holliman Jr., boom. That's what his dad said, too.
Boom, son. Physical
Boom.
evidence.
Physical evidence. Like George Holliman Jr. before him, Chris's family initially kept quiet about this encounter until 2 months later. On July 14th of that fateful southern summer, Mr. and Mrs. Ware of Lee County awoke to find their car, which had been parked along a back country road, guys, get a garage, had been attacked, for lack of a better term. The side mirrors were trashed, and the engine and electrical wires were gutted, as if something had just reached in and just started pulling the bits and pieces of the car out. Law enforcement officials were baffled to find numerous 3-toed tracks deeply embedded in the earth surrounding the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
As similar vandalism spread across Lee County, law enforcement started asking for leads. Christopher Davis, at the behest of his parents, came forward and told his story of the lizard man to the sheriff's department. In his own words, Chris described the encounter as follows. I looked back and saw something running across the field towards me. It was about 25 yards away, and I saw red eyes glowing. I ran into the car, and as I locked it, the thing grabbed at the door handle. I could see him from the neck down, the 3 big fingers, long black nails, and green rough skin. He was strong and angry. I looked in my mirror and saw a blur of green running. I could see his toes, and then he jumped on the roof of my car. I thought I heard a grunt, and then I could see his fingers through the front windshield where they curled around the roof. I sped up and I swerved to shake that creature off. By the way, There's a storm coming.
Oh, dear God.
More eyewitnesses came forward, including George Holloman Jr. Excitement in Bishopville ignited like a flame to swamp gas. Reports had hulking beasts chasing cars, reptilian howls, crying in the dark, a car full of teenagers spotting the creature darting across the highway. State troopers discovered its shredded 40-gallon drums stripped and scattered across the road. WCOS radio station offered $1 million reward for anyone who could capture the creature. Plaster casts of tracks made by the Sheriff's Department were sent to the South Carolina Department of Marine Biology, and the results were inconclusive. At least one hoaxer was busted. On August 5th, an airman stationed at Shaw Air Force Base named Kenneth Orr claimed to have encountered the lizard man and shot at him, managing to blast a chunk of his crocodilian hide clean off his body.
Probably trying to get that $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He presented evidence to the police, which turned out to just be fish scales. When asked why he would lie, the airman simply said that he wanted to keep the story of the lizard man alive.
Wow.
As August ended and the cooler months arrived, the lizard man retreated back into the swamps, and eyewitness accounts faded along with the hot summer nights of 1988. Despite a brief
So good.
Despite a brief 3-month run, the lizard man would not soon be forgotten. Perhaps never. He became an icon, just transcending from a brief, angry suggestion lurking in the swamps to mascot status, launching a small but dependable line of locally made merchandise that would entice tourists for decades to come. In 2008, interest sparked up again briefly when a local couple found their car had been vandalized in similar fashion to the string of attacks 20 summers prior. The incident was featured on an episode of Monster Hunters, who concluded through their expertise that only something large and strong, capable of exerting a 300-pound force, could have demolished their car.
Sure.
Aside from an obvious and comical attempt at a lizard man caught on tape photograph taken by churchgoers in 2015, Bishopville's resident reptilian overlord has remained dormant, hibernating in the realm of myth until another hot and humid summer lures him back out of our dreams and into our hearts once again.
Wow.
And that is the tale of the lizard man of Scape.
Liz Ryan, all right.
That was so good, Michael.
That was great.
That was goddamn beautiful, man.
That
It really
beautiful,
was,
man.
wasn't it?
That was a hell of a haint right there, boy.
That was a hike.
Hell of a haint.
Hell of a hate. Have you not heard? Have you heard of
No,
the
I have
lizard
now.
man?
Yeah. Now it's all coming back to me. My mom was always embarrassed by it because she was from Bishopville, so she was always like, "Oh, that's
yeah.
where the lizard man's from," and she was like, "Oh my gosh,
Right.
please stop with this lizard man stuff."
It
It was always taken as a major joke, like
Yeah.
at least where I was from.
Well, and we'll put this up. Here's the photo from the 2015 churchgoers who claimed that they had caught him on the way home from church. And, as Bryce likes to say, you be the judge.
Oh, yeah.
But this seems to be,
Oh my god.
this is like...
Not quite as good as the Patterson Gimlin.
No, this is like not even 1952 level Godzilla costumery happening here. But
Wow.
I do. Also, he is buff.
Yeah.
There is another video supposedly taken of the lizard man from around that same time in 2015, lurking in the swamps. But it's so far off in the distance that it's hard to tell. You know,
it is hard to tell. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate. Just like that's a pretty intricate looking costume, if that's what it was. And so, I mean, obviously somebody had to make that.
I feel like that's a toy.
So
I feel like that's a
points for
toy.
I feel like it's a
cosplay.
kid's toy that they zoomed in on. Like that
Yeah.
looks like
It
it's
could
made
be.
of plastic.
Come on in. Our next guest just arrived.
Oh, sweet.
So listen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Allison, what the hell was that?
Because she's going to know.
Because I have all the answers. It's true.
Kansas City. Food-wise, a city famous for its barbecue. But that's about to change. My name is W. Dave Keith, host of the podcast Taco the Town, and I believe that Kansas City is one of the most underrated, underappreciated, up-and-coming taco towns in the USA. On Taco the Town, we will shine a light on all the amazing tacos Kansas City has to offer. Kansas City is a great taco town filled with a variety of untapped taco stylings and flavors. And on the Taco the Town podcast, we won't stop until we've tasted every taco in the town. No taco table will go unturned. Each episode, we review a new taco taco joint with a special guest. We share taco memories, discuss taco topics, and put tacos to the test. We check the latest stories in taco news, and no taco is off the table on Taco the Town. If you love tacos, like I do, you're gonna love Taco the Town. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and Google Play. That's Taco the Town.
And we're back.
And
it's time for What the Hell Was That?
Yeah.
Allison Munn,
Yeah.
you just heard about your state's mascot, the lizard
My
man.
mascot.
Yeah.
What the hell is that? Do you
well,
think
it's a
that's
bunch
possible?
of no. It's not possible. That's not possible.
What about Christopher Davis, who saw this thing attacking his car?
Christopher Davis heard about it from some person who heard about it at church, from some person who heard about the
I heard
original
from a
guy.
friend
I'm telling you, like,
who-
there are only 3,000 people in that town. They all talk. I know he didn't come publicly forward with it until the 17-year-old came forward with it, but this guy did not stop to have some water by a stream.
Well, that's
I
George
don't buy
Hoffman
that.
Jr.
Right. But then that's where it
That
all
was the
started.
first guy.
Yeah, that's where it all started, and I don't buy that.
You don't buy that a local from
No.
Bishopville would drink water.
the 80s.
You're
That's
even
good
questioning
stream water.
You're even questioning that he would drink from a stream.
Yeah, so I'm saying instead he was drinking from like a 6-pack, and he was
Okay.
drunk, and he
Okay.
made up this story.
Wow.
This
But
is
he
what I'm
didn't
saying.
tell anybody until after the reports came out.
So the computer says, but I think that he actually, it's a small town.
Your
It's-
mom's from Bishopville.
but
You would know.
I'm telling you, it's a small town. These people all talk. They have
Here's
nothing
another
else
question.
to talk about. So they.
No one has spotted the lizard man
Since.
since your mom left town. So
I'm telling you, it's not my mom.
it's not. Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
But now there are stories from across cryptid lore.
Yeah.
I don't know if you listened to that report that I worked on at the beginning. You know, the reptilian thing has been around for a
Right.
very long time. So do you think it's possible, if not here in Bishopville, that there could be some sort of bipedal lizard creature living in the swamps or living much like Bigfoot is seen in the woods?
I don't believe
You're gonna say
so.
no.
I'm gonna say no.
Well, I would
I'm sorry,
say
guys.
I would say
I feel the need to apologize, but I have to. I think
No,
I have to
it's
say
the
no.
okay.
thing that I have a problem with the lizard guys from a zoological standpoint is that, lizards are cold-blooded creatures and they need to be low to the ground to keep their body warm. So I've never understood
Oh, the bipedal?
how unless they're warm-blooded animals. There was a whole the whole book that Jurassic Park was based on, Robert T. Bakker wrote this book called The Dinosaur, I think, Heresies. And it was all about this case for how dinosaurs were actually warm-blooded animals like elephants, big, large animals, because if they were cold-blooded reptiles, they wouldn't have been able to survive and have that size of body mass, so they must have
They've
been
evolved.
warm-blooded.
Yeah, sure.
And so they were some sort of reptilian offshoot, and that's who Alan Grant in Jurassic Park is based off of. But that's the problem I have with these lizard men and the lizard aliens or whatever, is that if they were truly reptilian, they wouldn't be able to. If in cold-blooded, they can't survive walking around like warm-blooded.
Yeah, but
creatures.
listen, dinosaurs evolved into birds. You don't think they could have evolved like from
That's a
That's a very
cold-blooded?
good point.
Well, that's
to
what a lot of
warm-blooded
people.
creatures?
That's what a lot of people think, is that lizard men are actually a branch
Sure,
of
a
reptiles
hybrid.
that evolved into humanoids in the same fashion that apes. A line of apes evolved into Homo sapiens.
Yeah, I mean, this is the story of mythos. This is metamorphoses. The desert crawling creature that takes to the skies. So.
I just think that the lizard creature defies more logic and science than a creature like Bigfoot, which
Sure.
could turn out to be just some type of primate living in North America, deep in
Yeah,
the forest.
well-
It's perhaps an endangered species or very small.
I got to tell you,
species.
when you were telling me the story, I was kind of immediately like, I originally thought of like some of the odd cases that came out of Skidwalker Ranch, and there's supposedly some sort of Skidwalker Ranch of the South.
Skidwalker.
Skinwalker Ranch of the Southeast.
Skidmark Ranch, that's where you live.
Skidmark Ranch. That's where I live. That's a hell of a hank right there. But no, I mean, I gotta say, I think there's more to this story than just like some guy dressing up in a costume and running around the swamps late at night.
Well,
especially
This specific story, the
I
Lizard Man
think-
story. Okay.
Yeah, I think there might be something to it. I mean, it definitely seems like it popped in and out of a certain time and then kind of went
Yeah.
away, which these things often
it
do.
follows a lot
It
of the
follows
same
a lot
patterns.
of the bullet points of
Okay.
Here's my
the
take
original
on it.
Witness not coming out after a year. This is
I think maybe Christopher Davis, the one who
17-year-old.
first reported
the
it.
first one.
Yeah, who, by the way, I found out died like 10 years after that. So rest in peace, young Christopher Davis. I think maybe he did have an encounter with something. And thought it was a lizard creature. And then I think the rest of it might have been small town hype.
sure.
That's what that feels like. That's a very small
I think
town
that's
thing.
small town people
Yeah.
being like, I saw it too. And then,
Well,
and then
then the
George
guy with the
Holman
fish
Jr.
scales
Yeah,
and-
and then that guy, I mean, and there were many obvious hoaxes that followed. But I think when something like that, whatever, the thing that really fascinates me about this story is that one summer and one real solid eyewitness
Yeah.
report.
Multiple
also,
solid eyewitness
and some
reports.
physical evidence, arguable physical evidence, left an impact on South Carolina to the point that there's like T-shirts of this.
Well,
creature
not a lot
now.
happens. That like it's a sort of a lazy,
I know,
sleepy
but,
sort of area.
I would argue that let's say I decide to put on a costume of
What do you
say
mean
like
not a lot happens? There's a lizard man living in the swamps.
I mean let's
and their beauty pageants that my mother
Right.
won. Yeah.
True.
but these things don't end up in people's mythology.
No, you're
like
right.
if
That's
if I decide to go out and put on some big canary outfit and jump on
Please
the cars,
do?
Oh,
you know,
man.
do you think it's
Canary Man.
Well-
a Patreon episode,
North
Canary
Hollywood.
Man.
For sure here
but
in LA,
If
but
I
if you
do
were-
that a couple times,
I think that's called the guy who's dressed as Big Bird at Man's Chinese Theater.
but that's not going to end up in a mythology that's selling local kitschy items in a gift shop, 40 years later. I don't
It
think.
had an
I mean,
impact.
It had
It had
an
an
impact.
impact, for sure.
It
that's
obviously
why-
left an
Right.
emotional resonance with these people who saw it. And I don't know anybody in a costume like that, like let's say that big rubbery costume looking thing, that can jump on a car and scratch
And still
people's-
make the
and
scratch.
still make those, physical marks.
I hear ya.
Something happened.
Guys, this
you
is
know?
why we put it up there in high strangeness. This
Yeah.
is the
It is highly
annals
strange.
of cryptozoology.
Well, I think there's more to this story than just some dude in a costume. I
Well,
think
that- yeah,
I
of
think
course.
this definitely follows the cryptid paradigm.
Well,
and-
the costume just came later when somebody tried to hoax a photograph
Right.
in
No,
2015.
Well,
absolutely.
that's the shame of it because that's where the people like me just shut off. I'm like, okay, well, the fish scale guy and that stupid picture, it's
Yeah.
obviously the whole thing isn't true.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the best way to be. It's just where my brain doesn't want it to be true. So when I find the little nuggets that let it not be true, I latch onto those.
Right.
Instead
No,
of
totally.
The
and
story.
obviously my brain works the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is real as fuck.
Well, and I should note, I didn't say this. I was saving it for what the hell was that? The Department of Marine Biology said that it was inconclusive, that they could not figure out what the tracks were. The
Yeah.
South Carolina Department of Fish and Wildlife, they were like, this has got to be a fake. So you have two conflicting
Very
opinions.
interesting.
Anyway, we want to thank Allison for joining us. It's so lovely
Yeah,
to see
that
you
You
was
guys,
again.
thank you.
Yeah,
It was
thanks for being
exciting
here.
to be here. As a fan, it was exciting to be here.
Right
Oh,
on.
good. Actually, the thing I wanted to say about you is you seem like the sort of ideal listener and guest because you, even though you say you're not open, you are very open to this stuff. Even, you know what I mean? Obviously you're not open to the lizard man, and
No,
that's
but I
fine.
mean, you've
but
had an actual ghost hunter on your show. Like I don't fall into that
Sure, of course
category of
not.
awesomeness.
No.
But when you're presented with evidence that makes sense to you,
Sure.
and you're like, hey, maybe there's something here.
you're our
Right.
favorite.
You're
I am.
open-minded, which
I
And
am.
we're saying this
promise
in
I
front
am.
of our next guest. You're our favorite
It's
type
peer
of guest
pressure.
because
Pressure.
you are skeptical by nature, but you are open to the imagination. This captures your imagination,
Sure.
obviously, based on everything that you said earlier. I
Right,
meant to
for
say
real.
this.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm interested. Oh, that sounds fascinating. The past life stuff, and that's really what this is all about when it comes down to these stories are fun and fascinating.
That's why I
and-
became such a fan of this podcast because
thank
I was
you.
like, ugh, I'm just doing you a favor to listen to the first one, and now
that's awesome.
And
you.
now I just
appreciate
I'm
it. Your humor.
obsessed.
You're like, let's see how crazy Michael is.
Exactly. I needed
Yeah.
stuff to talk to you about our friends, about you with our
Wait
friends.
till she hears this haint.
Oh man. Okay, so So when do the new episodes of Nicky, Ricky, Dicky, and Dawn air? For
I don't.
The final
They haven't told us. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. But
okay, cool. Keep an eye out
sorry
for
about that.
Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to find you?
Just my name, Allison Munn, on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome.
And
That's great. Oh, thank you
in
so
my
much.
house with my kids.
Okay. Well, let's not do that.
Don't come
Okay, yeah, don't come to my house.
Guys.
It's where I always am, but
Oh boy. Before we go, Riley, anything you want to plug?
Just the reptilian shadow government. Keep an eye out.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out.
That's all.
Bryce, how
Nice.
about you?
I'm on Instagram at Mr. Bryce Johnson and Twitter at Bryce O. Johnson. And follow us on our Bigfoot accounts. We're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah, you can find us pretty easily. I'm McMills on everything. I want to thank Riley Bray, our producer. And as always, I want to thank Suneaters for our music from the forthcoming song Come Alone, courtesy of Lotuspool Records. And until next time, everybody, why don't you just kick back, play some Billy Ocean, and remember
out
those
of my dreams.
hot summer
Get in the
nights.
backseat, baby.
Get in the backseat, baby.
Look forward to the summer
My car,
soon approaching.
get into
Jam
my
back in the
car.
day.
Good night, everybody.